All right, friends. So in this lesson, we'll be learning some of the essential JavaScript ES6 concepts. So by essential ES6 concepts, I mean that few things, those were introduced to JavaScript on or after year 2015, but they are widely supported by browsers. And these few features are used a lot by frameworks like React. Okay. So let's go through them one by one. So first thing is an arrow function. Okay. So let me copy a regular function. So here we have a regular function. Let us invoke it. Okay. Okay. Let me invoke it. So I call it with greet, and the greeting would be hello, and the name would be Vivek. Okay, so this is a normal function, and we need to log it as well. And if we log it, we get hello from Vivek. Okay, so this is a normal function. Now, how can we make this? How can we make this an arrow function? Okay, so first thing, we don't need function keyword. We can use any variable. So let's say greet, and so we have parameters, and instead of function keyword, we simply use an arrow here. Okay, an equal sign and uh, greater than sign. So we have arrow. So basically, this is an arrow function. Okay, so here we don't need the function keyword. One thing. Let's see if this works as expected. And we can see that it's working as expected. Okay. Now, second thing that you should know about arrow function is that when you have, you know, you just, you don't have anything else, but you just have an expression that you want to return, right? So here basically you just want to return an expression. So then you don't need the return keyword and you don't need the curly brackets. Okay, what you can do is, and this is a very common use case. Okay, so if you have been writing JavaScript for any number of time, you know that this is a very, very common use case where you just um, pass in some parameters and just return the value. Okay, so this is called implicit return. And now if I save it, I'll see that everything works as expected. This thing essentially means that return this. Okay, JavaScript understands that we want to return it. However, one thing to remember is that what if we want to return an object? Okay, so what if we want to return an object which has a key called greet, and this is the value? In that case, it will confuse the JavaScript compiler, right? For what are we using these curly brackets? Do we want to return it or is it an object? So in that case, what we have to do is we have to, you know, surround it with parentheses, and then we will see that we are getting our object back. Fine. So this is another aspect of an arrow function. So a couple of advantages of arrow functions. First, it is concise. It's immediately visible that there is a lot less amount of typing that you have to do. Then this concept of implicit return is very, very useful, where you can return something. Okay, when you just have an expression that you want to return, you can implicitly return it. You don't have to even type the return keyword or any of those things. Third thing to remember is that when you use a this keyword inside an arrow function, okay, for example, you have already seen that when you use this keyword inside a regular function, the this depends on the call side. Okay, when the function is invoked, that line of code determines the this. Okay, so this is a very special keyword for regular functions, but here in arrow functions, this is just like any other variable that will be resolved lexically. Okay, so what will happen is that if we are using this inside it, however we are calling this, it doesn't matter. It will move one step out to the parent scope, in this case the global scope, and it will take the value which is present outside. Okay, so it will keep moving out, looking for this variable in its parents and ancestor scope and take whatever it finds it. So this does not hold a special significance inside an arrow function. This is simply invoked, resolved lexically, okay, depending on the place where it's sitting. So this was a quick introduction of arrow functions. Next is object shorthand. So what is this? You will see this a lot. So what happens is, um, for example, you have user data and so you have a method. Okay, you have a function called user data that takes in a name and an email address. Okay, and you are returning back name and email. Okay, so I'm immediately using what you just learned, which is an arrow function. So equivalent to this would be function user data. It takes in name, it takes in email, and then you return an object, and that has a key called name, and that has a key called email that returns the email. Okay, so these two things are exactly the same, just the different, syntax. These two things are exactly the same. Okay, so now friends, what is the meaning of object shorthand? So if your key and value are same, so you have a key called name and you are passing in this name here. You have a key called email and you're passing on the email here. You can very well remove this. So whenever you have name, colon name, email, colon email, you can simply use the shorthand, and this JavaScript will automatically understand that we have a key and value of name and key and value of email. So this is object shorthand. Then let versus const versus var. Okay, so here I have a couple of examples to help you get comfortable with the concept. So let me copy this example. So basically we have a scope test. Okay, so this is a function called scope test. We have a simple block, an if block here. And inside the function we have outer variable, we have outer let. Inside the block, if block, we have an inner var and an inner let. Okay, and now we are logging inner var and inner let from the function. Let's see what happens. So friends, this inner var, okay, its value was inner var, no problem at all. But when we try to access inner let, which was defined inside this block scope, it is not available outside the block. This is called having a block scope. For example, vars are function scoped. So this var, wherever we, in whichever block we declared it, it is available throughout the function, right? So if I try to access, for example, inner var here, so you will see that I'll get an error. Inner var is not outside the function. So vars are scoped to the functions inside which they are declared. So the var, this inner var, has this function as its scope. It is available from anywhere within the function. But on the other hand, let is block scoped. So let is only available inside this block. So what you need to do is that you need to move it here, and only then you will be able to print both of them. Okay, so all the lets are block scoped. Of course, they are also function scoped if they are inside functions, and all the vars are function scoped. Okay. One more thing that JavaScript does special with var is that if you use a var or a let, for example, let's see let, inside a for loop, okay, you can see that this is inside a for loop, this is a block scope, right? This is a block. So what JavaScript does is, for any loops, if you're using let to declare the counter of the loop, every iteration will have its own I. And because it is block scoped, they are all separate i's. Okay, so if the I moves 5 different times, iterates 5 different times, there are 5 different i's if you're using let. But if you're using var, it's the same I that is changing 5 times. So friends, let behaves very differently internally when you're using inside any of the loops to use it to declare a loop counter. Okay, and var, on the other hand, it behaves in a very different way, and it's the same I, it's the exact same I, which is changed 5 times for each iteration here. But here, when you are declaring the counter variable using let, for every iteration you have your independent I. Okay, so this example is a very good example, and it's a very useful one. So here basically we have, let me comment this out for a moment. So here we have a simple function for with var, and I'm logging I in each iteration. Then I use a set timeout to basically wait for a second and then log out I inside every iteration. Okay, and if I save it, so you will see that for this line number 3, I got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But for this, the set timeout inside each iteration, I waited for a second and then I got 5 for all of them. Okay, because the same I was used, and by the time it reached here, the I was already 5. Very simple. Now, in this case, I would obviously want, even if it's handled asynchronously, I would want it to, use the value of the current iteration, right? And to solve that problem, JavaScript basically, helps us when we use let as the counter when we use let to declare the counter variable. So here you will see that you get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and in the set timeout function after 1 second we get again 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this I was different. Okay, so for all 5 iterations we had different I, and that took care of all of this. We didn't have to write any other logic to handle this. Okay, so this is something to keep a note of. So two things: let is functions is block scoped, vars are function scoped. Let is handled slightly differently in JavaScript when they run inside any loops, and we use let to declare the counter variables. Okay, and const, as the name suggests, cannot be reassigned using an equal to sign. So, for example, I have a const or a constant name, and it's Vivek. I cannot reassign it using equal to. It will give me an uncaught type error that we are trying to assign something to a constant variable. Okay. Similarly, if you have user, okay, you can use something like users.push, or you can use users.name to change it, but you cannot directly use equal to. So you cannot do something like user is equal to a completely different set of object. No, but you can of course use dot name and change this name to Akash, because this is not assignment. We are not assigning a different value to user, right? We are changing one of the properties of the user. So that's allowed in const, but we cannot reassign user again to something else. Okay, so that is const. Const is very similar to let, plus we cannot reassign it. Next, statements versus expressions. Again, friends, this is something you will see a lot in React, that statements are not allowed here, only expressions are allowed. So an expression is anything that evaluates to a value, and they are usually on the right hand side of statements. So for example, if you see let sum equals to 1 plus 2, okay, so this is a statement, and what is in the right side of the statement is an expression, because 1 plus 2 will do something and give us back a value, right? So 1 plus 2 here is an expression which will evaluate to something and give us back a value. 1 plus 2 will immediately give us back 3, right? So it's not a statement, it's an expression. And this entire statement, this is a statement made up of this expression. Okay, so this again ternary is an expression. Basically, it will give us back yes or no depending on what's in the left side of an arrow mark. This will give us back an array immediately, so it's an expression. This will give us back an object immediately, so this is an expression. And these are all statements. Okay, so if else is a statement, while is a statement, try catch is a statement, let array equals to so and so, it's a statement. Let obj equals to so and so, it's an statement. Okay, so these are expressions. Okay, these are something that will immediately evaluate to a value. So this is something to know, because in certain places you will see that in React we are allowed these expressions but not statements. So you should be knowing the difference between an expression and a statement. Then friends, we have rest and spread operator, and you'll find this a lot in JavaScript, and especially in React. We use this a lot. So rest operator helps us collect all the arguments in an array. Okay, So for example, we have a function called do something, and at the call site, we can pass any number of arguments. So how can we capture those arguments? How can we set the parameters for them? Is like, for example, for the first one, we can store that in a variable called first. For the second argument, we can use second. And for rest of them, however number of them they are, we can use this rest operator. And here we can use any name. Okay, it's not important that we use rest, but it's common to use rest. But they can be like, this can be any identified here. And then if we see here, so we will see, if we log it, we will see that we are getting all of our variables, and the one in the rest is an array, and it's guaranteed to be an array. Let's quickly look into an example. So here, if I execute it, you will see that in the first I got this one. For the value of second, I got 2, which is this 2. For the rest, I'm having an array of 3, 4, 5. Much easier to work, right? And suppose if I don't pass 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, for example. So this is a good thing that I'll still be getting an array. Okay, it's an empty array. So this rest is guaranteed to be an array, and it's super useful. Now spread operator. The spread operator basically explodes an array or object in the place. So if we have an array and we explode it or spread it, let's see example really quickly. So if you see, you have an array, and if you're logging dot spread array, so you are getting all the items exploded here. Similarly, for an object, if you use this explode, so basically you get back each item one by one. Okay, so this is again useful, and it is very common to explode all the properties of an object inside another object. Okay, so it's very common or similar to object.assign, which basically gives all the key and value, or all the members of this user object to our new object, and we can see that we get a brand new object back. So this is the spread operator. Very useful. I'll encourage you do just a little bit of practice of it, and don't get scared wherever you see these 3 dots in your React code. Next is, friends, destructuring. Another super important thing that I want all of you to be comfortable with. So what is destructuring? So okay, let me copy this example. So let me do one thing. So before ES6, if I want to get value of the first item and the second item, let's just think of 2, first and the second item. Let's forget about rest. Okay, this is the first and the second item. How would we do that? So we will declare let first is equal to or the first item of the array. Simply let second is equal to the second item of the ARR. Okay, and then we can maybe log first and the second. Okay, so we will get back 1 and 3. Okay, this is how we would have worked with arrays before we had destructuring. Okay, Now what happens, friends? This is much simplified. So if I use a variable name and immediately if I see a box bracket, then JavaScript knows that I want to extract something out of out of an array. Okay, and I can type anything here. For example, I want the first item and the second item. Second. Okay, it can be anything. Okay, let me use something else here. Let me use A here and B here. So basically what we are saying is I want the first item and the second item of this array. And if I log A and B, you will see that I get back 1 and 3. Interesting. So this is a much leaner way of extracting elements of an array. Now, there can be any number of items and I want rest of the items, right? So I can use the rest operator here, maybe C. So what I'll get is I got 1 and 3 and rest of the items inside in another array. Okay, so this is a very common way in which we extract elements from an array. Okay, so this is called destructuring of arrays, and this is a destructuring of objects. Let's see how it works. So I have an object called user. It has a property called first name, last name, age, and an array of posts. Okay. So now, how would I traditionally, before we had destructuring, get the first name? Okay. So we'll do something like let first is equal to user dot first name. Okay. And I will be able to log first, and I'll get Vivek here. But in the destructuring way, what I can do is I can use any way to declare a variable, and whenever after let or const or var I see a curly bracket, I write a curly bracket. JavaScript understands that I'm trying to extract something out of an object. Okay, so what am I trying to extract out? I'm trying to extract out the first name. From which object? From the user object. Okay, and now if I log the first name, I'll see Vivek. What if I want to use an alias for it? So I can do something like first, and I can log in first here. Okay, so this is object destructuring. So after let const or var, whenever I directly see a curly bracket, the JavaScript knows that, or I as a developer know that someone is trying to extract something out of an object. Okay, and this is very powerful. So in this example, you can see that we are extracting first name, we are extracting last name, and also we are able to provide a default value. So if I have age, get me the age, else get me the I give a default value of age to be 40, and then rest of it. And then I can log rest of them, and I'll see that I get them really nicely. Now friends, what if I want to get posts title? Okay, I want to get the title of this post 1 and post 2. So let's see how can we do that. So here we are seeing a curly bracket immediately after the variable, after the const. Okay, that means we are trying to extract something out of We are trying to extract something out of, an object. So we are trying to extract something out of the posts property of the object. And we are not interested in posts, but something which is inside post, which is the value of post, which is an array. So here we have done array destructuring. Okay. And we want to get the title of each item. Okay. So the first item's title and the second item's title. And then if we save it, we see that we can get post 1 and post 2. Something to remember here is that if we are, uh, if our destructuring is multiple levels deep, okay, if our destructuring is multiple levels deep, then we only get the deepest keys as variables. Okay, this posts, we don't have anything called posts here. We only have these deepest keys. Okay, so this is destructuring, friends. Yeah, this is pretty much it. Here I've given some very real worldish use cases. So we have a function called useState, for example, and a function, we know that it will return um, an array, and one number, the first item is going to be a number and second is going to be a function. Okay, so this we know. And in the destructuring way, which is super neat, we can just use let, and as soon as we see the box bracket, we know that we are trying to extract something out of an array, and to be precise, the first item, the second item, and they will be stored in these variables. And then we execute the use state, and we basically get back this exact entire same thing in just one line of code. So this is something to experiment with. I've given another very real worldish example. So explore it and experiment with it, and let me know in case you face any difficulties in understanding it. But these are some of the essentials of ES6 that I want all of you to get comfortable with if you want to get very good at React.